Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webcast, Reaching All Corners of the Market. I am Elizabeth Freeman from Nexent, and I am the moderator for this session. We'll start this webcast with a few housekeeping announcements and then quickly move on to our speakers, followed by time for Q&A, and we are very much looking forward to the questions and answers. So enter them in the chat throughout, and then we will pull them up at the end. As a reminder, your screen is customizable, utilizing the various widgets found at the bottom of your screen. Presentations can be downloaded as PDFs from the resource list in the menu. Attendees are in listen-only mode, but can submit questions through the Q&A box at any time during the webcast. All presentations will be available for on-demand viewing within a few days on the Engagement Hub. Zoom discussion rooms will open at the end of the webcast to continue the conversations and allow for additional questions. Click on the Zoom widget or download the daily Zoom link PDF available on the Engagement Hub, and we do hope you join us for that. Don't miss the Shameless Commerce Happy Hour today at 3:30 on the Zoom platform. A link can be found also on the Engagement Hub. Last, we want to thank our sponsors and partners for their support of the Hot Water Forum. And now I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. First, we will have Megan Ching, who will be discussing the LIFT program in California and their success in engaging the low-income community. Then we move on to Adam Parker and his great work at Emerald Cities Collaborative, working directly to train and engage diverse contractors for their support of these programs and the larger commercial and residential markets. From there, we move on to Ruth George from Eversource, who is currently supporting workforce development for Mass Save. And last but never least, Shante Davidson. Shante, also at Eversource, leads diversity initiatives and will be sharing opportunities and challenges that programs face as they try to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are basically taking a journey from the program participant through the contractor and workforce up through the commercial structure of wholesale and distribution to really dissect and inform challenges and solutions. And finally, I challenge you all to think about approaches that you can take from the speakers today back to your own organizations so we can all support the growth of DEI initiatives within our industry. Without further ado, here's Megan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about MCE's Low-Income Families and Tenants Pilot Program, also known as LIFT. Tying back to the theme of this panel, reaching all corners of the market, today I'm really going to be talking about the challenges, successes, and lessons learned in engaging with affordable multifamily housing. So first I'm going to do just a little bit of table setting and talk about, first off, who is MCE? Well, MCE is California's first community choice aggregator, so they are a nonprofit local government entity that basically procures energy from local and renewable sources and then uses PG&E's distribution to get electricity out to the rest of their service territory. So the LIFT program, again, is available to low-income multifamily buildings, and what it is able to provide is incentives for traditional in-unit energy efficiency measures, as well as electrification for in-unit and central domestic hot water and HVAC systems. So the thing I want to stress here is that LIFT really is first and foremost an in-unit measure program, but there are opportunities for common area measure upgrades, but only if it's electrification. So how does the LIFT program process work? Well, once a property comes into the pipeline, they'll be matched with a technical analyst who will go out to the site and identify energy efficiency opportunities as well as electrification ones. That same person will work with the property to determine a scope of work and really make sure that the goals of the property are being met with the measures that they're implementing. They'll also connect the property with MCE to verify that they are actually income eligible and can participate in the LIFT program. The technical analyst can also help with contractor selection and will be engaging with the contractor to make sure that all of the selected equipment meets the minimum program requirements. Lastly, they will verify when installation is complete that everything is installed to the program requirements and help with the closeout process. And I think, hopefully, you're seeing my slides show up correctly. I am advancing through it, but please let me know. I'll be monitoring the group chat if there are technical issues and it looks like it's not going through. But as far as I can tell, I think it is. So I guess I'll just continue through with this slide of what does LIFT aim to do, and I've broken it up, into 4 main goals. And sorry, now I'm seeing that my slides are flipping around, so I'll try to go back to where I was. All right, cool. So what does LIFT aim to do? I've broken it up into 4 main goals. The first being is to really create a more comfortable indoor environment and help lower utility bills for low-income residents. And the way that we do this is through the implementation of the measures. However, we are able to actually quantify those savings by doing pre- and post-upgrade surveys. So once a scope of work has been put together, then we will actually go and collect feedback on thermal comfort of the building as well as what their utility bills are looking like. And then once the upgrade is complete, then we will actually go back, ask that same set of questions, and compare whether or not what the changes really were. Then, okay. Secondly, we want to provide energy efficiency and electrification education to both residents, property owners, and maintenance staff. The way that we do this is by providing handouts, which really talks about the different technologies that are being installed so that residents really understand the difference between the old, like natural gas equipment to heat pump ones. And we'll also talk about time of use rates so that they can modify their behavior to really ensure that they're keeping their utility bills as low as possible. Secondly, we provide maintenance training. So we've actually gone in person to do like hands-on learning with manufacturers so that maintenance staff can have a better understanding of what the differences are between their old equipment and their new ones. Thirdly, we want to quantify the impact of electrification from both a thermal comfort, air pollutant, and cost perspective. So when before we install heat pumps, we'll actually go in and field monitor the air pollutants coming from a natural gas like equipment, whether that be a water heater or an HVAC system. And then we'll also come back and do monitoring of the heat pump system. Secondly, we'll do that bill analysis so we can really understand what the cost implications are of that upgrade. Lastly, we really want to provide a comprehensive building retrofit. So we're going back to that single point of contact model that I mentioned at the beginning, where we're not only having one technical analyst be the main point of contact for, sorry, Lynn, okay, sorry. I thought that there was maybe some technical issues. Okay, so I'll just go back to a single point of contact model that really shows that while we're engaging with a property, we want to be able to bring additional incentives through different program offerings. Okay. Next, I can talk through some of the challenges. The first is really around income verification. So in order to participate in LIFT, you have to meet the 200% federal poverty line, which translates to very low AMIs, area mean incomes, within California. So we found that even some deed-restricted properties aren't able to meet this qualification. There's really 2 different ways to qualify for LIFT. One is whole building, and the other is residential, like resident by resident. So in order to do the whole building, at least 80% of the units must qualify, in which case the whole property can receive LIFT incentives. However, if less than 80% qualify for LIFT, then we have to move to that resident by resident process. And what that entails is the property owner will have to basically work with each of the residents, collect income verification information, and then have them sign off on an affidavit. This is very difficult for a variety of reasons. One, it takes a lot of time from the property owner. And then 2, it is really hard for residents who may not have a really close relationship with their landlord. And a lot of them are hesitant to share such personal information. One of the other challenges is really just around technical. So there's a lack of central heat pump water heaters in the market, unfortunately. So it can be hard to find people who have that design experience. And for the ones that there are, it can be hard to actually get them into contracts since there's a lot of this type of work going on. And that may not align well with what the program timeline is. Secondly, we have existing building conditions. There's a lot of different building types in California. So we have frequently run into issues with space constraints of fitting like a new heat pump water heater into an existing water heater closet, as well as finding that we don't have enough electrical capacity in order to add more of those electrification measures to the panel. The next set of challenges really is around sort of the human engagement part. So the first is owner engagement. Unfortunately, a lot of these properties have a lot of competing priorities, and it can be really hard for them to take on additional workload. And the way Lyft solves for this is really trying to make that process as streamlined as possible, again, going to that single point of contact model that I had mentioned a few slides back. The second is tenant surveys. So when we are looking for feedback, originally we had been going door to door and really just like talking and having a conversation with residents about some of the questions we had for utility bills and health and safety. However, with COVID, we really had to pivot. So instead, what we did, rather than having people meet face to face, we ended up distributing these survey cards, and you can see an example of that on the right, which would prompt participants to call into a line. And they would be able to get the same sort of human interaction, talk to a real person to leave their feedback. And we also want to note that these cards are available in both English and Spanish, and the surveys could be taken in English and Spanish as well. So now for some of the successes of the program. So we have a single point of contact model that has worked extremely well. So 81% of Lyft participants also co-leveraged another partner program. So if you look at the graph on the right, you can see the types of programs that were leveraged with Lyft. So you can see that we have several energy efficiency as well as health and safety programs, and some that were co-leveraged together. And it looks like it might have been a bit cut off, but that 24% is health and safety plus energy efficiency. So we really were able to do deep, comprehensive retrofits when we were engaging with properties. One of the other successes of the program was the goal was to install 125 heat pumps, but we were able to pass that, installing 196, and those 196 heat pumps served 286 units. So we did have some central systems installed, including several central heat pump water heaters. And then we also were able to serve a wide variety of property types. And I think this really speaks to the flexibility of the program and the ability to allow different types of technologies to be incentivized. So through our program, we've been able to help out homeless shelters, senior housing, as well as buildings without access to natural gas. Cool. And then lastly, I just want to talk about some of the lessons learned through Lyft. So first, it's important to build strong relationships with property owners and developers. We found that a lot of these nonprofit developers have large portfolios, and if you can bring in a couple like good projects and show them that it's not burdensome and that we really are a partner in walking them through this process, that they'll open up their pipeline, and that can really feed more projects into your program. Secondly, we want to allow for more flexible income eligibility, because the way that the structure is now, it's very rigid, and it is kind of naturally excluding the market rate, sort of naturally occurring affordable housing. And then lastly, we want to support the development of contractors who do electrification work. And this is something that Adam is going to talk about in his presentation next. But through the Lyft program, we've really found that there is a need for central heat pump water heating. And in California, this technology is really accelerating. So we're going to need that knowledge base to grow if we want to be able to meet sort of all of our goals. With that, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you, and apologies for some of the maybe technical issues. My contact information is here if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to just hand it off to Adam. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Super program. I'm going to be speaking today about, as Megan noted, the involvement of people of color and women contractors in general in the energy efficiency and renewable energy field, but certainly applicable in the hot water space as well. First, let me tell you a little bit about Emerald Cities. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary last year. We're working in major cities around the country, mostly on the East and West Coast right now. And we have a multi-stakeholder intersectional model. And I'll tell you just what those jargony terms mean as I move through the presentation. But we've gotten results. We have trained hundreds of minority, women, and disabled business enterprises. We have succeeded in bringing millions, tens of millions of dollars in contracts to them. We've aligned with labor standards and getting the contractors to pay prevailing wages. And we've worked successfully, Ruth is going to talk more about this, about getting disadvantaged opportunity youth into apprenticeship programs. Urge you to go to our website and see more about what we're doing. Today, I'm going to be talking about contractor equity, and I'm going to start by describing why equity and inclusion. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the stakeholder intersectional table that is a key part of our work, both at the national level and in each city. And then finally get into the guts of the presentation, which is discussing just exactly how we work on developing contractors and preparing them to connect to the market and helping them make those connections. I want to start perhaps what might strike some people as reverse order, but the big picture logic of inclusion is building capacity. As we know, to do the work that the people at this conference are here to do, and more broadly, we know that we need to do deep retrofits and electrification on almost every building in the country, not to mention the world, over the next 20 years. And we've got to start soon, and we've got to start big. So you can imagine that that means at least 4 million retrofits, deep retrofits a year over 20 years. And that's bigger capacity by far than we have in the construction industry right now. We need more contractors. We need more workers, even if we're able to do things to increase productivity. And I say this firmly with tongue in cheek, we're just not going to have enough white men around and available to do that work. In other words, the climate change goals, the retrofit goals alone demand and require that we diversify the workforce on racial, gender, and other grounds. But there obviously also is, in our current climate in the United States, the need to significantly increase opportunities for people of color, especially Black people and women, to overcome what is undoubtedly the continuing legacy of racism and sexism in the construction industry in the United States. This is definitely a technical training challenge, but more so, it is a social challenge. And in the case of contractors, it is a business challenge. The foundation of Emerald City's work, as I said, is to make sure that everybody is sitting at the table to discuss what needs to be done and how it's going to be done. And this is a structure that we've certainly used in the work that I'm part of in Boston, where we built an advisory committee that includes folks that span all of the boxes that you see on this slide. And we meet periodically. One of our speakers, Shante, is on our advisory committee in Boston. And the goal is to make sure that government, labor, contractors, GCs, technical high schools, utilities, everybody is at the table so that we are all cohering around the goal of advancing women and people of color contractors and getting the job done right. So the overall framework of our work involves several verticals. One is information knowledge transfer, i.e. training, and then follow on capacity building and coaching. Next is identifying potential pipelines of projects, and I'll go through those in detail in another slide, and making sure that we have ways to connect contractors to them. Then there is the provision of back office building business services, which contractors in any small business needs to grow, but we are putting together in our various cities teams of back office professionals who can step in and support the growth of our contractors. And then there's workforce development, which is going to be the subject of Ruth's presentation. So let's start with the Contractor Academy. The Contractor Academy has been an 8 or 9 session, 2-hour weekly session. We've run 2 of them in Boston in 2019, which you can see live at the bottom picture, and then you can see what everything has looked like in 2020, what the Contractor Academy looked like last fall in Zoom. But the focus is the curriculum, and the curriculum is broken into 3 parts. One is helping contractors understand the market that we are all here trying to build for energy efficiency and renewable energy and overhauling our buildings for many reasons, including climate change. But then we get into various business skills like accounting, like marketing, like bonding, worker safety, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that small businesses need to know how to do and to do well and to do right. So we have some very hands-on training focusing on those aspects. And then we get into business strategy, growth planning, and raising capital. And most of the contractors in the contractor academies, when they enter the academy, they're at $500,000 or less in revenue. So they have a lot of growing to do and a small base to grow from. So that's really our key market, although we do have some larger contractors participate. And you can see that the numbers are tiny and probably unreadable on your screen. But in our graduating class from last fall of 20, 17 were people of color, 3 were white women, and overall we had a 50-50 gender balance with 10 men and 10 women participating. The key to recruiting contractors and the key to making this work is to actually help get them projects. They definitely need a training foundation to do that. And our training foundation has been business focused. Obviously, they need the technical training aspects as well, which are provided in other ways. We help connect contractors to those. But the most important thing is identifying pipelines and connecting contractors to them. And there are a number of categories which are familiar probably to most people here, but we have worked out relationships with utility and state energy efficiency programs, most importantly, programs run by Eversource and other participants in the Mass Save program, but also with connections to the Mass CEC, also represented on our advisory committee. We work to involve contractors in public buildings programs at the city level and at the state level in Massachusetts and in the other states and cities we work in. We connect to housing agencies, CDCs, major contractors, developers, and ESCOs, and real estate portfolios. Many of these organizations either want to or have to include more women and people of color contractors. So we certainly use that, but we're looking for partners who, in particular, are willing to lean even past those obligations and really aggressively work with us. And we have been lucky to find a number of such partners. But even after we've identified the partners, it is crucial that we support contractors in working through the procurement process. And the procurement process includes all sorts of financial records, certifications, and many things which are very difficult to navigate for any contractor, but especially smaller contractors and especially bootstrapping contractors, which is most of them at the smaller end. So supporting them through those procurement processes is a central component of our work. And then finally, we work to organize and provide a number of business services, not directly from Emerald Cities, but by working with local businesses and other organizations that are supporting professional development, especially among people of color, with legal help, marketing help, accounting, bookkeeping, insurance, bonding, working capital, equity capital. So we're working with BECMA and other organizations to build those alliances in the Boston area market, and similar work is happening in other Emerald cities. This is the third leg of the stool, if you will: training, connection to pipelines, connection to business services. And we think that we're able to, we have demonstrated the success in this model. One of our contractors increased their business by $600,000 in the year after participating in the Contractor Academy. Another went from starting up to at almost no revenue to 100,000. So we know we're getting results, and we're doing so in a way that promotes, as I noted, racial and gender justice, as well as building the capacity we need to deal with climate change. So I'm going to end with a quote from John Lewis, which is applicable certainly to this work, but the broader work that the people at this conference is doing, that together we can make a difference, and we know we need to. My contact information is here. I look forward to the question and answer part of the session and to hearing from you on a follow-up basis. Thank you for the opportunity. And let me now introduce my colleague, Ruth George from Eversource.
Thank you for that, Adam. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ruth George. I am an energy efficiency community strategist with Eversource. And this afternoon, I will be speaking with everyone around diversity and inclusion in the energy efficiency industry, and primarily around workforce development. And today's discussion, I really like just to share a thorough discussion around our impact as a company for Eversource, a part of a larger group that you may be familiar with called Mass Save. Why at D&I and equity, like why it matters, what it requires, what the energy efficiency workforce looks like now based on our research, what some of our efforts are on workforce development, and really the value of partnership development, and a call to action. So for those of you who are familiar with Eversource, that is a part of Mass Save, we are New England's largest energy delivery company, delivering safe and reliable delivery energy to approximately 4 million electric and gas customers in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. Between our 3 territories, we service about 500 towns and thousands of square miles with our electric service. We are a leader in the industry and have been awarded as a just company for our commitment to being a positive impact and leadership on top priorities, which is identified by the American people, such as fair pay, ethical leadership, good benefits and work-life balance, equal opportunity, and so much more. And this is because, as a company, we are definitely a huge advocate and supporter of, in developing the work around clean energy, and we do it in multiple different ways and programs. And in addition to that, we also have our energy efficiency program that is ranked #1 in the nation through providing some of the programs you see here, such as our demand response program and Get Connected. One of our work that I'd like to highlight today, our investment, is in our diverse workforce. Our goal within that is to increase investments in diverse suppliers, to donate to diverse and social agencies, promote more diversity internally and externally within our work and with our trade allies, and to prioritize minority and female external hires, to expand our pipeline to 2-year community colleges and high schools, and to increase recruitment to HBCUs and universities. So we have a robust commitment to workforce development and diversifying it. And so I just want to kind of talk through, why D&I matters. And in doing that, the first thing I would like to ask everyone that's here to begin this discussion is just using your chat function. What word comes to mind when you hear the word diversity? So if you could just chat that in there. Now, what word comes to mind when you hear the word inclusion? And finally, what word comes to mind when you hear the word equity? Thank you for those who participated. It's important that we understand that there's a variety of descriptions, but the most valuable one component is beginning the discussion on D&I and equity, and identifying underlying fears, talking through how to enact D&I, and tailoring it to reach your company's goals. Diversity and inclusion and equity matter not only to potential talent, but also to the company's culture and its ability to reach its goals and with diverse communities. Diversity and inclusion and equity in the workforce creates a more inclusive workforce, with inclusion serving as a tool to reach talent. A good acronym to think about this as you work through your D&I efforts is IDEA, which is an acronym that was created by Project Ascenda and Ascendas. And this particular acronym really does a great job incorporating what D&I is by including access. So while inclusion allows everyone to have a voice and be heard, and diversity allows those conversations to have distinctive backgrounds and experiences, and equity tries to enter the discussion, thinks of who wants to enter the discussion but can't, thinks about equity focused on removing systemic barriers of participation and engagement. Access is important. If you don't create access, and that means not just bringing on individuals of diverse backgrounds and creating employee groups for diverse voices to connect, if there's not access to really impact company policies and procedures, it's really hard. It can be difficult to properly enact D&I. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is more than policies, programs, and headcounts. This is a stigma that exists in this work, and thinking that if you hire diverse individuals and you bring them onto the workforce, then you have invested in D&I, and that's just not true. It's really looking at a company's culture. It's looking at how it works with varying populations and how it goes about valuing that and engaging and incorporating that in its practices. Equitable employers outpace their competitors by engaging in unique needs, perspectives, and potential talent in the workforce. And doing that creates trust and commitment, not just externally, but internally with your team. It also allows representation in the workforce and supports economic development in all diverse communities. Often you hear organizations say, some of this work that needs to be done is outside of the work that we do. But in reality, if you are hiring diverse voice individuals and you're allowing them to have access to the policies that your company has to really impact the culture, you are not only, giving your company an opportunity to diversify its culture and to meet the needs of the current workforce, but you're also reconnecting back to communities that may have overall lower incomes, lower resources by employing individuals from their communities. There's a quote by Pat Odor that I think is really valuable in this that reads, "When we listen and celebrate what is both common and different, we become a wiser, more inclusive, and better organization." And this is what D&I allows us to do. And so many times you'll hear the description of what D&I is. I think it's important to also discuss what it requires. It's a wide range of racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural backgrounds with different lifestyles, experiences, and interests. Inclusion requires policies and procedures that ensure all people feel welcome, and leaders and employees demonstrate behavior that allow different perspectives. It's so important that higher leadership not only buy in and reflect, but also believe and practice this methodology. Again, it's not just about having those people in the space, it's about having policies that reflect what you truly believe. And equity really requires an evaluation of underlying social structures. Too many times the term equity is just thrown around what it means, and there is sometimes this belief that it also means equality, and it does not. Equity is about removing those systemic barriers so that every individual that is engaging with your workforce has similar, if not the same, opportunities. And in order to do that, you have to understand what those individual barriers are. And enacting this framework requires using equity as a tool to identify barriers, host open and honest discussions, acknowledge implicit biasness and preferences, increase input and buy-in and create more access through inclusive and goal setting, and adding timelines and commitments to increase inclusion efforts. If you don't have goals, if you don't have timelines, if you don't have individuals in those spaces impacting company culture, thinking through how you remove systemic barriers participation, are you really committed to having an inclusive workforce? I think it's important to talk about the value of data and equity. So the workforce has changed and diverse companies are winning. This theory of diversity and inclusion is not something that's now, is a lie. It is not practical. It is not true. And we have to do our research. The minority working age demographic has increased by 37% since 1980. That's a markup of 19%. By 2044, the minority population will become a majority in the country. By 2065, we won't have any single ethnic or racial majority. By 2025, millennials will make up 75% of the workforce. That's 3/4 of the workforce, and 44% of them classify themselves as minorities. Racially and ethnic diverse companies are 35% more likely to perform better and outperform competitors. I give this data to show you, to illustrate how valuable this population is, and to communicate that companies who are not thinking about, who are not incorporating D&I in their work are going to definitely be behind the curve and already are. It pays to be inclusive. Again, it's not about just hiring those individuals. It's how those individuals work to really reach your company goals. Inclusive companies are 1.7% more innovative. They experience significantly higher cash flows. Millennials are a large population that support this level of development. And they also are a population that are very much invested in working with companies that have a culture of inclusion. And I think it's important to just be honest about what that is. And so some of the research that we've done as a company through MassSave is administered a workforce development study that indicated that 92% of our employers reported hiring difficulty over the last 12 months, with 45% indicating that hiring had been very difficult prior to COVID. And while there are varying reasons of why this existed, work experience and hands-on job training we've identified was vital for our success. And 45% of our employers reported that they don't have any formal diversity and inclusion affirmative action efforts. That means they are not implementing these policies. It is not a part of the work that they're doing. So that means they are going to be significantly behind the curve. That this means that there's a whole population of individuals that will not understand the work that they're doing, and that will not engage in their workforce. And our research has identified that a large proponent of our population in the workforce is white males, and that means we lack the understanding that diverse populations and communities need for us to service them as an energy company, but also to reflect their communities in our workforce. Through here, I've identified what's needed based on what we learned from the study, which is affordable training and education close to home. Diverse populations are no longer at a place where they're going to come to you. You have to have a place-based approach where you're coming to them. It has to be an opportunity that offers career guidance, mentorship, connection to the business. The way that businesses have traditionally operated has got to shift. Businesses that are challenged by this will have serious challenges in reaching 75% of the population of the workforce. That is a huge number, and I want to keep underscoring that because it really has serious implications in innovation in the work that we do. Recommendations that came from our study is that those who are involved in entering our workforce, need support. They need support through training or vocational technical trades, creating career pipeline. So we're no longer in a place where someone's coming into a company and they want to be in one position for 20 or even 5 years. That individuals are looking to work for companies that have strong recruitment backgrounds and provide training and development, and they provide pathways into the industry. So we've taken all this information and turned our research into action by building path through a new program that we are creating called Clean Energy Pathways. This program directly speaks to the populations that we've identified that are not a large component in our workforce, and that is women, people of color, young adults. This program will work, on a pre-entry level with a vocational emphasis, apprenticeship background, focusing on weatherization, HVAC, and energy specialists. And our goal is to continue standing up additional pathways because we have a robust industry with so many opportunities, and we want to make sure that individuals are connected to those. And of course, clean energy pathways. A part of what we're trying to do is work with workforce development organizations. So we want to work with partners that are already doing this work. We understand that clearly we have not excelled in reaching this population, but there are community-based workforce development organizations that have. We want to incorporate them and make them partners in this, and so they can help with recruiting, case management, and making sure that these individuals are successful in our workforce. And that's because we're being intentional with the population that we're trying to reach, and we're being honest about the support that they're going to need to not just be successful, but to have real retention and pathway into our industry. And a part of that is also us working to educate and train our actual workforce, that's our vendors and trade allies, on what D&I is, why that's important. And I would just say in closing, my call to action to those who are here is to research and evaluate your workforce and identify what those barriers to participation are for populations that you've clearly identified that are not engaged. You want to innovate the workforce by prioritizing and setting D&I and equity goals. These are discussions that have to move to, from discussion to inclusion to policy, to real goals that are based on timelines and real deliverables. You want to build partnerships to create inclusion and reduce duplicate efforts. If this isn't something you do well, outsource and identify who does and partner with them to do it well. And build pathways by designing workforce and internship programs with place-based approach. And this means really meeting your the individuals you're looking to enter your workforce where they are. Too many times companies are using, let's say, mainstream platforms to promote jobs and opportunities. And sometimes immigrant, minority groups, women, certain populations don't operate on those sites. Identify where they do. Doing these items and tracking and measuring your success is so important to this work, so you can see if your programs are performing well in reaching these populations. In doing these things, you will excel in the workforce. And so I just want to leave you with this. Diversity is a fact. But inclusion is a choice we make every day. As a leader, we have to put out the message that we embrace and not just tolerate diversity. And now I will have Shantae that will come on to continue this discussion.
Well, Shantae is here. Thank you so much for that great presentation, Ruth. Hello, everyone. Shantae Davidson from Eversource. Delighted to be here today. As Elizabeth introed me, I do diversity work, specifically supplier diversity. I am going to be talking today about the Mass Save commercial water heating program. This is a quick sidebar. I have been a program manager, both as an implementer as well as at the utility, and so I've managed both lighting as well as HVAC and water heating programs. So today I'm going to share a little bit about my experience and what I've seen in terms of what we can do to make sure that we are designing our programs with customers in mind. So because newsflash, we're not currently doing it. I want to just, before we dive into the presentation, want to give a shout out to all the logos that you see at the bottom of the slide. This represents Mass Save for our water heating program, sans Cape Light Compact, but everyone else does have a gas part of their utility. And I also want to acknowledge Energy Solutions, as they are our current program implementer and always have been since the program was initiated in 2015, which is wonderful. And they helped to put these slides together. So certainly want to recognize them in their efforts. Finally, this program is funded by a charge on customers' natural gas bills. And let's take it away. So today we will spend some time talking briefly about program design and what participation trends we're seeing, and finally what program recommendations we can take out into the world so that we can start designing with equity in mind. And like I said earlier, spoiler alert, we have not actually designed this upstream style program which is often referred to as midstream, with our customers in mind. And so now that we have a lot of conversation, and to Ruth's point, a lot of actions that are happening around diversity and inclusion, we're really at a pivot point. And instead of designing based on scale, we really need to start designing based on our customers and what their needs are. And we'll end this presentation with some recommendations about how that can be done. So let's talk about the current program. First and foremost is the goal. The goal of the initiative is to increase customer access to high efficiency equipment by making equipment more readily available and at a lower price. And that basically means that at the point of sale, we are working with our wholesalers, our hot water wholesalers, hot water equipment. So just for a second, close your eyes and envision you're walking into a brick and mortar location because you had an emergency in your basement and your hot water tank exploded. It's equivalent to walking into that building, transacting business over the counter, and grabbing your equipment and leaving. Now, this program depends on market transformation, and that really depends on a behavioral design that is steeped in supply chain and easy access to the product. So you notice a moment ago I said brick and mortar. We've designed this program with scale in mind. And so with scale, we need to figure out who to activate. And by deciding who to activate, we consider 3 Ps: product, pricing, and people. Who has the product? Well, wholesalers have the product, and in fact, they have plenty of it. We have almost 100 wholesalers throughout the state of Massachusetts, sprinkled throughout Greater Boston, as well as Greater Massachusetts. These wholesalers actively stock local product that can be accessed immediately. And so with that in mind, we've taken the guesswork out of the process of how to go about sourcing a hot water heater by activating this market. And so let's just talk about that for a moment. So the program works as follows. The wholesaler, again, they have physical locations with the local inventory. So we know whenever there's a need for a hot water heater, we can simply grab one from the wholesaler. Then the wholesaler leverages their relationship with contractors to reach customers. And so the contractor and the wholesaler are the two that are actually conducting business together. And they are both validating that the customer is eligible and validating that they can participate in this program. And then we are making sure that the prices that these products are purchased at are at a discount. So with this in mind, the wholesaler sells the product to the contractor essentially sells it to a customer, and the customer is virtually passive or non-existent in their actual sales transaction. And so while the customer does receive new equipment to meet their needs, we do not police whether or not they're actually receiving those incentive dollars. And so as we go through the results of the program, which have been widely successful, just keep in the back of your mind that the customer may be receiving the benefit of these financial dollars, but they also may not be. Now, to wholesalers' credit, we must recognize why they are so important. Again, they have the local inventory. It's virtually available immediately. They are the subject matter experts in the field, and they serve for training and other different socialization types of events that happen. But by being so focused on wholesalers, we do lose sight of our customers. And the plain truth is there's no evidence that any of our wholesalers have strong ties to all of our customers, specifically diverse and harder to reach customers. But there is a strong evidence of a marketplace. I've talked to a few wholesalers and manufacturers reps. 2020, given everything that happened, was a banner year. Sales have not been higher, and that's been consistent for the last few years in Boston. Obviously, to the state of Massachusetts' credit, we've had a booming energy efficiency economy for a while. But there's so much demand that there are wholesalers that are situated around the Boston proper to specifically serve that market. And while they are doing a great job serving that market, they're not serving anyone. So just by way of an example, in 2018, when supply moved into Hyde Park, which is predominantly a Black and immigrant community, When I go on the website, there's no leadership that's Black or immigrant community, but we'll leave that for a conversation during Zoom. Similarly, we have FW Web within this marketplace, and we have Economy, Plumbing, and Mattapan. And so this all matters. This all matters because there's clearly a market, and while we are certainly capturing a large portion of the market, we're not capturing everyone. Now, it's really important to understand why we have centered this around wholesalers. Again, you have to have the stock to be able to influence stocking and purchasing practices. So whenever something is typically sold, it's usually because of emergency, which is replaced on burnout, and only 20% of the time is because of new construction. So with this model, we're really relying on contractors that are having relationships and conversations with their customers and therefore buying the product through the wholesale market. We're going to transition to results. These results are pretty phenomenal. Like I said, we've had the program around since 2015. We've incentivized over 22,000 units, which equates to $13.1 million that have been paid out. And again, keep in the back of your mind, that $13.1 million is going to wholesalers. And then we've saved about 7.2 million therms. Therms are super hard to come by in this space, so we've certainly been successful there. But the truth of it is that $13 million can be, if it's going to a customer in some capacity, it can be invested in families and businesses and communities. And so we need to start designing with that in mind. That being said, we know in upstream how to reach diverse communities. And I'm going to just contrast our upstream water heater program to our food service program. Our food service program is basically similar in model. We call it upstream, but the participation levels of diverse and harder to reach populations is much higher. In fact, it's so high that we have program collateral in 3 languages: English, Mandarin, and Spanish. And so when we think about the nuances and who's participating in food service, we should really be asking ourselves why. Why is that? And what can we apply to this water heating program to that we can borrow from the food service program? So let's just talk a little bit about the design. The design is basically, instead of having 3 players with the wholesaler, the contractor, as well as the customer, it just has 2 players. It has a dealer, which is really the wholesaler. So let's just say it has the wholesaler and it has the customer. Now, let me first acknowledge that food anchors most communities. I think we all know that, as it preserves culture and is a symbol of pride for people. That said, diverse and harder to reach people and segments are sourcing their own product and equipment themselves. So go on this journey with me for a second, because it is different from water heaters. It's fryers and freezers and ovens and other tools for cooking, but the practice by which these materials are sourced is the same. So with these diverse and harder to reach businesses, the business owners are more hands-on. The best example I can think about is Restaurant Depot. They also anchor communities and have lots of brick and mortar locations sprinkled throughout Massachusetts. Business owners are going there to purchase their own food versus having it delivered by the haulers you see on the road like Cisco, US Foods, and the list goes on and on. So these more diverse and harder to reach business owners are going in to purchase their own food because they're interested in saving money and they're willing to pick up their own food. While they're actually in this physical brick and mortar retail location, they can see program marketing material, again, in 3 different languages: English, Mandarin, and Spanish. So it discusses the program, providing education. It provides the financial benefit or the rebate, and it's allowing them to purchase the product themselves at point of sale, and they are actually realizing that price difference or that discount. Effectively, what they're doing is they're sourcing their own products. And so we need to challenge ourselves, like these harder to reach and diverse businesses are. Are we more concerned with scale and savings? Or are we like them? Are we more willing to sacrifice some of our time and for convenience to make sure everyone can participate. As we consider how to reach all customers, I think we can use this model as a benchmark for how we can start changing some of the programming. So let's talk a little bit about some short and longer term goals. In the next, I guess, 3 to 6 months, one thing that's really easy, probably more of a 3-month benchmark, is cross-promotion of upstream programs. We currently have 4 upstream style programs: water heating, lighting, HVAC, and food service. We know who our food service participants are. We know that they have an interest in better products, or they at least had a need. So we can cross-promote our water heating, our lighting, and our HVAC programs, specifically water heating, because all restaurants need water. And so let's use that information. Let's start beating the streets. Let's send out postcards. Let's do what we need to do with their contact information to enable more increased energy efficiency sales. The second thing, which we could probably do again within the next few months, is to reconsider and reimagine the outreach model. Currently, our outreach model, again, centered on wholesalers. We serve as account managers or account executives, and we focus on said wholesalers. So I might have a portfolio of wholesalers where it's 3 to 4 different wholesalers, and my colleague might have that. And it makes a lot of sense because it allows you to understand your portfolio of wholesalers, build trust with them, and to determine tactics and activities to increase sales. However, again, we need to think about getting deeper and working with the customer. And so I would certainly challenge even Eversource as well as our utility peers to reimagine the outreach model with their trade ally team. Why not consider a geographic model that's possibly based on zip codes? Consider diverse teams. I myself, again, have been on an implementation team, actually beating the streets and managing programs. I've never seen another Black person on any of the other teams that I've managed or been a part of. The closest we've gotten to is one Indian male. And I've been working on upstream programs for over 5 years. So we're well overdue because we have plenty of diversity when it comes to gender, but we need to make sure people of color and also multilingual teammates are becoming part of these teams. And I do, in fact, mean a team because we should be working in pods. We need to be able to share knowledge with one another about the geographies that we're covering. Again, it allows us to build trust within communities, especially if we are out of office for some reason and we can provide dual coverage. And it helps us to reach businesses and share our message with them. And then finally, we need to figure out how to leverage utility data a bit better. We're clearly doing it when it comes to validating addresses to make sure people can participate. And so we can use the data in the same capacity to make sure that everyone who pays into this fund can benefit from it. Now, finally, program recommendations boil down to 4 key things. That's data, education, accessibility, and staffing. When it comes to data, we have it, so let's use it. We've long known who doesn't participate in this program. We're big fans of pilots, so let's put a pilot together and let's either fail or win quickly. Let's consider that the program design. It doesn't have to be the one that I'm recommending here, but let's put our heads together, get some diverse people in the room, and figure out what it should look like. To Ruth's point earlier, let's promote these programs in non-traditional channels. You don't meet everywhere. Everyone doesn't meet in the same medium. So let's figure out where we can meet our customers and start telling them about these programs so we can continue to educate them. We can also leverage centers of influence, whether that's a church or a community center or so on. The second thing is educate. Again, tell these customers about their programs and meet them where they are. Use community partnerships and reimagine what the marketplace looks like. Is it an online marketplace? Are we partnering with certain wholesalers within a certain geography? Figure it out. Then accessibility, language access plan. We have 3 different languages that we communicate the food service program to. Let's make sure we're communicating in all the languages that are actually paying into this program. Where's the marketing being promoted at? What channels are we using? And then staffing. Again, I cannot overstate this. Diverse trade ally teams matter. Again, with multilingual staff members. Account management by geographic territory. Continue with those community partnerships. And finally, to close it out, I'd like to encourage everyone to design with full participation in mind. Let's shift the focus from the wholesaler to the contractor. Let's tinker with program design and consider how we can reach all customers. And most importantly, let's talk to people. Let's talk to these customers who have not been participating. Ask them why and ask them what we can do to get them to participate. Create KPIs to ensure diverse populations are being adequately served, and let's make sure we're actually having an accountability system that we're paying attention to and that we are measuring on a regular basis. The truth is, utilities can be leaders here, and when we signal that it matters to us, it matters to everyone within the energy efficiency economy. And so with that, I will get off my soapbox and thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you to all of the speakers. That was a very interesting panel. I know we are at time, and there were some questions that were submitted. So if you want to hop over to the Zoom meeting, we will all be there, and we can gladly answer those questions and anything else that you have. And just in closing, I challenge each of you to do one thing that you learned today within your own organizations, because it's going to take each and every one of us to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion in the energy efficiency sector. Thank you all so much.